like, if you're willing to die for your family and you have that like clear in your head, if you're ever in that situation where that there's the possibility of that happening, you don't have that distraction of worrying, oh, what if that is, am I willing to sacrifice that? It's like, no, you've already decided that. You're just going to do what you know needs to get done in that situation.
Welcome back. Another episode of Ignite the King. I am Dr. Michael Diamond here with G. Russell Reynolds. Welcome.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
And we have a third with us for the first time.
Special guest,
Tyler Shepard. Welcome, brother. Yeah. Good to see you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Glad to be here.
We were in for a treat. A part of our expanding of this podcast is to start to bring in literal specialists in the themes and work that we're doing with Ignite. And right now, as you know, and have been listening, we are in the season of the warrior, and we have a super special guest, Tyler Shepard, that has a huge introduction, and Russell's going to take care of that in a moment. And just buckle your seatbelts. I got my big cup of coffee because we're going to go deep in what it means to be a man at the highest level. So with that, Russell, please take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyler's a friend of mine. We've known each other for a couple of years and got to do some work together. And I'm wearing my glasses today, Michael. I'm just keeping them on because I got to read some shit. And hopefully it makes me look intellectual, not old. No comment. So Tyler Shepard, no longer retired, actually came out of retirement to go back into the reserves to continue serving his country, which thank you, brother. Thank you for that. So Tyler is a Pararescueman, or PJ. PJs are highly trained rescue specialists in the Air Force's elite rescue asset. He is a nationally certified paramedic and highly trained in austere and trauma medicine. He also contracts for the Department of Defense, training new PJs in their pre-deployment combat medicine course. With extensive training in firearms tactics, he's a certified range safety officer and a private firearm instructor. He's an expert in mission essential equipment, pack-out gear, and gear preparation as a PJ from multiple combat deployments, and a POC for his team's mission alert cage and other real-world missions. He's a level 1 survival instructor and has extensive SEER training, which, again, go ahead. Give me SEER.
Survival, evasion, resistance, escape.
Survival, evasion, resistance, escape. Extensive SEER training and real-world applications from his time in the military. Tyler is passionate about teaching civilians these essential life-saving skills and cream of the crop in emergency medical instruction, and a man of heart and character and substance, which is why we're friends and why you're here. Thank you so much for being with us, Tyler.
Dude, guys, everything. I don't know Michael as well, but yeah, you guys are doing some good stuff. So stoked to be part of it.
Yeah, we had Tyler on our brotherhood call last night, sharing some deep wisdom around being a warrior, what it means to show up in some of the most extreme circumstances. And we just thought, wow, if our group is hearing this, then the world needs to hear this. Men need to hear this, and hopefully raise the bar for showing up as an awakened man in the world today. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, and glad you talked about that as an awakened man in the world, because again, I think a lot of men are trying to figure out what does that even mean to be a man? And again, Michael talked about it ad nauseum, this pervasive subculture that wants us to think that masculinity itself is toxic. It's not. It's the absence of masculinity that's toxic. So we need to re-embrace the positive qualities of what it means to be a man. And for this occasion, for this episode, Tyler, for you, I wore one of my favorite shirts. It says it is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, which is all about preparation. And that's one of your biggest messages, is that preparation, which is not just collecting, water and emergency food rations. It's mental preparation. And one of the things that I heard you say is, we're talking about your role as a man, that protector is one of your most basic and primal functions as a man. Let's start with that. Speak to me about that. Speak to us about that.
Yeah. So, I think our role as a man, we can't think about it without considering the females that exist. So like our counterparts. And I think a lot of our role is what we can provide for women as well as other men and society. But I think that's one of the most basic roles a man provides for women that they don't provide for themselves the same way. And if we can't meet that role, like what good are you to a woman if you can't even protect her? And I want to be clear that, I know Russ and I talked about this last night, but when I say that if you can't even protect her, it's not necessarily meaning like I can beat every man if I had to in a one-to-one fight, but there's a difference between being one who's going to put up a fight and no one wants to engage in that. And by doing so, you actually are protecting the person. There's a difference between that and being one who can, kill anyone in a street fight or whatever. So I just want to be clear that being a protector is way more than being able to win. It's being one willing to engage and being one to deter violence. And in order to deter violence, you have to be ready for violence. That's my thoughts on that, at least.
I agree with you. You have to be highly skilled at violence. And I think I can't remember who originally said it. Jordan Peterson just touched on this, that in order to be a pacifist, you have to be highly skilled at violence. That way you can choose peace. Otherwise, you're not a pacifist, you're a victim. Right? And I think what you're talking about is not necessarily even that highly skilled at violence, but that willingness to step up to defend your woman, your willingness to stand for your values, your willingness to put yourself on the line to protect what is precious to you.
That's exactly what I'm saying, because that willingness in itself is a deterrence. And people feel that. People feel the willingness, and a lot of times that'll prevent them from engaging more and taking advantage. So, yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, we talk about a lot in our work, like just being a confidence that you walk around with, right? Russell and I mean, I've shared this story with him many times, but a number of years ago, I started training Krav Maga for that special reason, or that exact reason, because I didn't feel confident walking down the streets of San Francisco with my wife if something was to happen. And Russell talks about this a lot. Not only couldn't I have done something, but would I have done something, right? And just that confidence of if something went down, I'm not afraid to get hit, hurt, to be in the way. And Russell shared even on our call last night videos of people that, essentially are running away from protecting their family and leaving them vulnerable to the worst things possible. So you also talked about it last night, if you maybe could hit on around like accepting death as the possibility going into these extreme, obviously in your case, very high level situations, but for a man walking around today, just knowing that his day might be numbered and that might be his fate and destiny, and being okay with going into situations where that is a possibility. There's sort of a freedom in that comes. And what if you can hit on that?
Yeah, no. So a couple of things. So one, I think it's kind of important to clarify, like we have different backgrounds. I've got my military combatives. I also have some Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. You've got Krav Maga. You've got MTS. And the important component is just knowing what to do. Like you each have your different styles, but with that sense of knowing, that is a base from where you can operate. And that's better than having no base. If you don't have a base, you don't know how you're going to operate. So I think that actually ties into the question that you just asked now about, being willing to give my life like that. I had that base when I joined the military, and I thought there was a good possibility. I thought it might even be my destiny to give my life doing this job, and it still might be. I'm still in, and that's fine. Like I truly embrace it. I've had an awesome life, and I think coming to terms with that early helps remove any unnecessary mental interference that might exist in high stress situations because you've already accepted it ahead of time. So that's kind of what I was getting at. And I think that anyone who's going to do a job that has a legitimate possibility of, dying, you should come to terms with that ahead of time, because if you're not okay with that, you probably shouldn't be doing that job.
I think that job's called life, that all men are in.
And I think you can even extrapolate that to just regular life. Like, hey, like, am I willing to to give my life for these other things and that you might interact with that might not be a combat zone or whatever. Like coming to terms with that early can help you be ready if you ever do encounter something that to have that stable base that I think is important. So,
yeah, you said something really important there. Without making that decision, without having come to that awareness and conclusion ahead of time, when you get into that situation, whether it's, combat in Afghanistan or whether it's protecting your wife on the street, there's a hesitation that's in place because your focus is on protecting yourself, where when you've made that decision, your focus is on protecting the mission, protecting the asset, right? Protecting your woman. And having been in fights, I think you would confirm this as well, that when you're faced with somebody who's not afraid to die, it gives you pause. It's like, holy shit, this guy's willing to go all the way. Like that confidence, that knowing that somebody, and it doesn't matter if he's got zero skills. I'm like, this guy probably has zero fight capabilities, but he's going to go from zero to psycho in a heartbeat because he's not afraid. Okay. And there's a level of respect that changes the situation in that. That's that confidence walking in. I think is a big deal for men, whatever the arena may be.
There was a man on our call last night, just real quick, when this question came up, and he said, "Am I willing to die for my mission?" He's like, "I don't know." But then I realized my family is my mission. And he's like, "I'm absolutely ready to die for that." That was a really cool awareness.
Yeah, actually on that, I think it's, you said, Russell, about allowing you to, did you say be focused? Because I was actually thinking about that. When you embrace the possibility of dying, then when you're in that situation, you don't even need to think about that. You're just going to focus on what needs to get done. And you don't have that distraction of what if I die? It's like, I'm just going to focus on what I need to do. And that clarity you get from it is awesome. So, that's just like the man who's willing to die for his family, Yeah, like that clarity that you get. Like if you're willing to die for your family and you have that like clear in your head, if you're ever in that situation where that there's the possibility of that happening, you don't have that distraction of worrying, oh, what if that is, am I willing to sacrifice that? It's like, no, you've already decided that. You're just going to do what needs to get done in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no fear of that consequence to yourself. Yeah, it's beautiful. Speaking of mission, I know that your comeuppance in as a PJ when you were in training, you were just John Wick right out of the gate. You aced every single test. Right? That's the way it happened, right? You had a great awareness that you shared with us last night. When that shift from ego to mission. Maybe you could talk about that.
Yeah. So, that was a facetious by Russell right there, it was just great. So, I could share the start of the pipeline. I kind of crushed it with my selection course. After that, I'd probably say that's the only course that I crushed it in. Maybe SEER and dive school did pretty well. But yeah, I did not crush it. I'm not the type that learns things really quickly. I've learned things in depth and deeply, but because of that, I think surface learning doesn't work very well for me. Got to my teams, became a PJ, was not an easy graduation. My first final selection course, it was a struggle, but I got there, finished strong, and had an awesome, feeling of being a PJ. Got to my unit, had a shoulder surgery, and then my skills I got a little distracted. I was focusing on other stuff in the unit. Then I got moved to another team due to my injury, not being ready to deploy. And then I basically got put under the microscope from a poor performance from a training event, and then I got checked on my medical assessment skills, and I failed. I didn't perform well, and then I was under the microscope really intensely for I'd say like 3 to 6 months, and there is the possibility of being removed from the career field, and that happens. That's I know multiple people. A guy happened to on my team, and a personal friend had that happen to him who was overseas at a different unit. But while I was in that situation, it felt like that would have been like the biggest ego failure. To me personally, everyone's got their own way that they value things from an ego's perspective. But going through 3 years of training, getting to the teams, getting my beret, and then being deemed unworthy to deploy and be an actual PJ would have been like a really hard hit. And that hit, kind of going back to what we were saying earlier, was an unnecessary distraction. That ego coming in is an unnecessary distraction, because instead of focusing like, how can I not get this ego hit? How can I not, fail this med assessment and then be removed from the career field? That distraction is actually not part of the mission. The mission is to be the best PJ I can be, to be the best combat medic and the best tactician, and finding that truth. Not, I want to pass the test so I can like not look bad and then fail. It's like, hey, wait. Like, even if I pass the test and then I go deploy and a patient dies under my care, or I cause one of my teammates to die because of poor tactics or whatever, like that would be the ultimate failure, and to like shit that actually matters, not my ego, so basically I first got to the point where I was like, all right, well, I might get that failure might happen. I'm like, what am I going to do about it? I'm like, I'm still going to give it my all. And I just had that focus of like, I'm just going to do the reps anyways. I'm going to do my best. And, I get all this advice from others, locations and whatnot, from different people, some good, some bad. And it was a little overwhelming. And then eventually I came to this point where I was like, hey, like, what really matters like here? And I got that point that it's like the ego doesn't matter. It's like the mission matters. Like, I want to actually find out if I am, worthy to deploy and be a PJ. And once I did that, I just got really focused, and, I was already putting the reps in, and from the reps, I got my identity of like, no, actually I'm not bad. Like, I'm physically capable. I'm improving my gear. I'm improving my understanding. I'm improving my muscle memory to where I'm doing the right things exactly when I need to, assessing the right things. And yeah, I ended up, passing my medical assessment, doing pretty well. There's always little mistakes. And then I begin to improve, and I just built the habits, like the infrastructure to become a good PJ, just to become like, yeah. So
if I can jump in on that, because you shared the story with us last night, and one of the things that you said is resting on your laurels is weak. And you said that because you had become the guy that was resting on your laurels at one point. And the way you told it last night, to my recollection, is that there was a commanding officer who basically ripped off your head and shit down your neck, and proceeded to give you a steady diet of shit sandwiches for that 3 to 6 months. And that was what caused the shift, where you had the awareness, where you shifted your focus from me to mission. And what is the mission? It's not about me. It's not about my ego. It's not about what happens to me, which again kind of relates to that willingness to give it your all, to die if necessary. You became solely focused on becoming the best PJ you possibly could. That's when you put in the reps. And again, guys, life, those of you listening, life will feed us shit sandwiches sometimes. Sometimes, like, that's our whole diet for a while. What are you going to do about it? Right? Are you going to bitch and moan and complain and be the victim and it's not fair? Right? Because nobody ever said anything about fair. And you had that moment where you're like, wait a minute, this isn't about me. And you're like, no, it's not fair, but I'm going to use this as fuel. and you became the best in your class, basically because you put in the reps when nobody was looking. You put the work in private so that you could, you know, become the best and get the results in public. And I just want to honor you for that, man, because that's a huge transition. That's a key component that a lot of guys miss.
Yeah, so I'm not claiming that I'm the best PJ, but I did become a really good medic, and anyone who deployed with me would agree. But I think what you're saying there, Russell, is, and I think this is important for people to just recognize the way the mind operates. It's like the shit sandwich, like it feels like shit, and things might not be fair or feel fair, but you're getting better. Like, yeah, in the moment, your ego's fucking getting fucked up, like, cool. But you are actually getting better. So it's like, what are you basing that fairness on? It's like, I'm getting extra attention. Everyone's poking holes in my shit, but it's like, but I'm getting that extra attention to get better. That's like,
Yeah, there are a ton of things to unpack in what you just said that were just really, really important. And I wanted to highlight on that moment when you're like, it's not my ego passing this test, because that doesn't mean shit. Because if I'm out in the field and a patient dies under my thing, no one's going to ask about the fucking test I passed, right? That's not what's important. And how many, we see it in schools all the time. Like, I went to chiropractic school as professional, right? And some of the people that were the valedictorians, best on paper, failed in practice. And then the ones that barely got through school were able to have these huge successful practices, right? Because in reality, they were able to show up, they were able to be present, they were able to take care of the task at hand, not just turn in an assignment, right? So the real just like self-awareness that you had and the gut check of like, this isn't about me, this is about the mission, as Russell led in with this question, it's the mission, not the ego. So super valuable for men. Again, Tyler, we're talking like combat situations, literal life and death, but how many of you men out there in your business, in your relationship, where it is life and death in a lot of respects, and are facing the same things, these same challenges, and how you're choosing to show up in them? I mean, the parallels just keep coming. So thank you for that.
So I'm curious, Michael, are you a slow learner in general? Because I think there might be a pattern. I consider myself a slow learner, but I wonder if you are more likely to lead towards mastery, because I think there might be a relationship there. People that learn really fast, I think, are less likely to make it to mastery. Maybe the pattern I've seen, but I'm curious. Have you seen that in chiropractic school?
Yeah, I would tend more towards that. Absolutely. I think what they say, it's 10,000 hours to be a master of something, 20,000 to be a legend, something like that. And yeah, my wife and I have done 80,000, well over 80,000 now nervous system sessions in our practices over the years. So it's that, like, talk about reps and just getting it in over and over again and getting that skill set. It's an unconscious competence, right? We just know how to do it. And that also plays into what you said around when SNAFU, which we talked about last night, and shit's just all fucked up. Well, you just go to your training and you know what to do. The emotion's not even a part of it. I'm not saying don't have emotions, but in those critical situations, you just follow the protocol, and because you've drilled it, trained it, and the repetition. And that's, I know I've done a lot in my life. Just even, again, just back to chiropractic, learning how to adjust the spine. I take the model spine and thrust into it 100 times on this side, 100 times on that side. So when it was the 101st time on a real human being, I've ingrained it in my nervous system and my muscle memory. So this warrior energy of, and it sounds like your training, which is so extensive on so many different levels, that you just can do it. It's so right there. And I think this is so powerful for men to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. And for, like, I think the reason I was trying to get at that is because, like, I think people that are very detail oriented, or they want to learn every nook and cranny of something, it's a little overwhelming to get the basic parts in the beginning. And then, but your mind is more ripe for getting every nook and cranny, which in the end, can lead to more mastery. But I don't know, it's a pattern I might have seen, but just wondering what your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, you called it out really well.
I agree with it. I agree with it. It's important to do that. Like, and I think of it just even in MDS, Master Defense System, we practice precision, which is mechanics, then speed, then power. If the secret to getting really fast is going really slow, because if you're going fast out of the gate, you're just hiding your weakness because your mechanics are shit. You haven't put in the hours. You haven't done the reps. You haven't done 100 compressions on a model spine. You haven't gone over this tourniquet technique on a dummy, whatever it may be. You haven't reviewed the business plan 100 times. And so you're just bullshitting yourself and others. I just want to share something from what you wrote that last night. This kind of encapsulates this: push through, never quit. No luxury of victim identity mindset. Things might be unfair, but you're getting better because of it. And that's unfair to others. And for that, I am grateful. Finding gratitude for the shit sandwich you're being served. That's transformative. That's transformation. You also said thinking for yourself. The answer is there. If your heart is in the right place, your mind will find it. Seeking, you will find. The question is, what are you going to seek? Are you seeking to become a good medic, proficient tactician, and operator, or seeking to pass a test? That's beautiful, man. Like, where's your focus? Yeah. Thank you, man. And by the way, since you mentioned SNAFU, guys, anybody listening, we'll put some links as well, but check out Tyler's websites. And SNAFU stands for what?
Situation normal, all fucked up. It's an old World War II military acronym. It's used in common vernacular as like, hey, I got in a snafu, like a little issue or problem. But I think it's really applicable to what I'm teaching, which my mission is equipping the average person with the most amount of emergency readiness skills in the least amount of time. So that's my mission. And I think when you satisfy that mission well, you'll be prepared for any snafu and you'll be able to approach the situation as situation normal. Like, it's expected. I've trained this. It's fine.
That's a huge distinction, right? It's like everyone else like, oh my God, it's all fucked up. And you're like, yeah, situation normal, right? And you can be calm in the center of chaos.
As we often say in personal growth, it's not what happens, it's how we respond to the situation, right? And if you can see all the scenarios and be prepared for them, especially in the times we're living now, when it comes down to just straight up tactical, emergency medical, firearm training, protecting ourselves, our loved ones, like, we're not that many clicks over from that possibility. I think we're within about, 40 days of that. When's the election? So you talked about that last night, right? With the firearm training as well. It's like most people, and Russell was talking about how we train. It's like most people train marksmanship when that's probably the least important thing to train. When the first thing is the mind and getting that right, and then your connection with your firearm, and then marksmanship. So maybe you can kind of speak to that both from a tactical perspective, but also just as a approach.
Yeah, definitely. So when you think about some type of lethal encounter you might engage in, pulling the trigger and pointing it at the would-be person who's going to receive the lethal force, that's that distance that you're going to be doing that encounter in. You're not going to need your marksmanship skills. That is not that hard. Like, really shooting at the range at 15 meters and trying to get like a grouping like the size of your fist, grouping as in like the bullet holes, that's not gonna save you. Like, in a situation, what's going to save you is being able to recognize right then, not a moment too late, that I need to utilize my firearm to protect myself. Okay. And you need to have no hiccups from when you draw your firearm, presenting it and utilizing it. That whole process, starting from your mind of the decision making and that readiness and pulling out the firearm to where you squeeze the trigger, that's where you're going to have the most hiccups. And that's the area that people do not train. Everyone is just training the squeezing the trigger till the bullet hits the target part. And I'm saying you need to have no weaknesses or recognize the weaknesses you have, and you need to train those because those are the most crucial ones. So Yeah, if you go to the range and you're shooting the fucking light, and the wall and stuff like that, it's like, wow, that's so fun. No one's ever that fucked up. I've never seen anyone that fucked up. But if that was the case, yes, train that. But that's not where people are fucked up. They're fucked up starting from the brain and drawing the firearm and being proficient at moving it around.
Yeah, the recognition of the actual threat, the mindset of taking that action, the deployment of that lethal force, marksmanship being the last week, and like you said last night, in most situations where you have to deploy lethal force against a threat, an assailant, that person is going to be 5 feet away max. You don't need to be able to hit, the pin of a head at 20 yards. Like that's not where it focuses. But people go to ranges and they're standing still with zero threat, shooting a paper target that's not moving. Wrong focus. And I love that. You mentioned 3 key areas of readiness as a protector: emergency medicine, lethal force encounters, disaster preparedness, and survival. And Tyler, am I correct in assuming that they are in that order for a reason, that emergency medicine is probably one of the most important ones?
Yeah, I think it's the most likely one. So I think we all know people, and we've all been in situations where emergency medical uh, situation happens in front of us, or we know someone who had a family member died, or I'm sure we know of someone who's died of overdose. Opiate overdose is the leading cause of death for people under 50 years old. So yes, I think those are the skills.
Wait. You hold on. You just brushed past that one. Let's rewind that. Did you just say that opioid overdose, and especially we've got a little bit of a fentanyl crisis, if anybody hasn't noticed that our southern border is wide open, that opiate overdose is the current leading cause of death for people under the age of what?
By sheer numbers. So 45 is what I used to present, but I heard recently under 50. So it's even going up in age is what I'm saying. Once you get past that, I think heart attacks and cancers become the leading cause of death. But yes, opiates is killing a lot of people, and it's the leading cause of death, sheer numbers under 50. So yeah, it's a thing. And the reason I think the medical skills are important is, one, you need to be able to recognize this, and two, stop the death from happening. And that's what I'm all about teaching. Like, hey, yeah, you can call 911 for a lot of things, but there's some patients that if you don't do the basic things for that patient, they're going to die or be damaged at a significant level before 911 gets there. So let's take an opiate overdose, for example. If you're one, you have to learn to recognize it, that it's actually happening. And what's killing those people is the respiratory depression. If they're not breathing sufficiently because the drugs is causing your respiratory drive to go down, if you're not breathing sufficiently, your brain's not getting the oxygen it needs. If the brain's not getting the oxygen it needs, it starts to die, and you could become a vegetable or actually die. I think emergency medicine is really important. It's the ways to stop those negative situations from happening is pretty basic maneuvers, and I think it's important for people to understand them. So yeah, that's why I think emergency medicine is important.
And probably most guys don't have Narcan in their med kits, if they even have a med kit. But just that knowledge that by doing chest compressions, you could save somebody who's overdosed on opioids. That's huge. Most people don't know. So that knowledge. And even on, because I just paused on that point of the opioids because that speaks to the tragedy that we're experiencing in our country right now. But the emergency trauma, I think a lot of guys, when they think of being a protector, they go into, I'm going to learn how to shoot guns. I'm going to learn martial arts. I'm like, okay, cool. So now you're the first on the scene in a car accident, and there's a woman trapped in the car and she's bleeding out. What do you do? And the worst hell that I could imagine is watching someone die, especially one of my loved ones, because I didn't know what to do and I had the opportunity to learn it beforehand. that like I would have to live with that guilt for the rest of my life. So I think emergency medicine is huge. That trauma medicine is huge to learn, and lethal force encounters, sure, but that's part of being a protector, is learning how to save a life, not just take one.
I just want to double tap on that real quick, because recently I went to the firehouse with my son. We were dropping off a big bag of coffee. Shout out to Black Rifle, by the way. They had sent me the wrong coffee, and instead of having to send it back, they were like, if you go donate it to a first responder or a veteran, we'll just send you a new one and kind of carry it forward. So shout out to them. So I took my son and we went to our local fire department. And of course, they're like, oh, you want to see the fire trucks? Now, my son is 9, so like he's kind of over that whole thing. Like that's like when boys are like 3 or 4, we're like, yeah, sure. But the guy was all excited. Anyway, he's showing us around. And he told me that 80% of their calls are medical calls, right? It's mostly car accidents, very few actual structure fires, what they're training for in that regard. So 80% of their calls are some kind of medical intervention. And that just really woke me up, and especially prepping and getting ready for this call, no pun intended, that how important these skill sets are, because we're more likely to run into this as a civilian on our day-to-day basis. Someone dropping on the floor in the grocery store, someone coming upon an accident or anything, or our own home, right? Accidents fucking happen, especially with kids, right? Get into something they shouldn't, or play with a knife, or whoever, whatever it is. And being able to be calm, rational, know what to do in those situations definitely seems like it's number one.
Yeah, in order to stop death, they're really basic maneuvers, whether it's CPR if someone's heart's not beating, or if it's an opioid overdose and they're not breathing enough, you're going to do rescue breaths. Like, you don't need fancy gear, you don't need drugs to save them. You just need some basic understanding and some basic maneuvers to keep them alive.
And you teach these things, and we mentioned SNAFU earlier. Your websites, SNAFU Ready, SNAFU Wear, am I correct?
Yes, yeah. Wear is the clothing brand, and it's WARE, and it's kind of like a play on words, because it's all about being more aware and awake. It's spiritually aware, societally aware, and then just there's some fun whimsical art as well. So those are the 3 categories.
And SNASN as in Nancy, AF as in Frank, WARE.com for the and is the med kits on that one or on the SNAFU Ready?
SNAFU Ready. Yep. SNAFU Ready is the brand that is training you how to be ready for SNAFUs or emergency situations.
And all this will be in the show notes as well.
Yeah, emergency trauma medical kits. Tyler has prepared these. Some of the best I've worked with for actually just the essentials, and not a bunch of bullshit that you're never going to use or is just going to confuse your brain in the heat of the moment. And also, you do this training where you train civilians on how to be effective in an emergency medicine situation, have that knowledge, the lethal force encounters, disaster preparedness, and survival. So, guys, if you're listening to this, I highly encourage you to reach out to Tyler and get the med kit, get the training. He's also, on social media, he posts a lot of instructional videos that helps people out. And obviously tell him you heard about him through Ignite. So he goes, hey, you guys don't suck after all.
Yeah, I got free resources on my website too. Like, if you're interested in disaster prep and you want to just have a clear roadmap from someone who is been in this for like a long time, and also survival instructor, and I have a legit, I'm versed in this. So if you want a clear roadmap for how to move forward, that's no bullshit, check out my website. I've got some good stuff there. And then, DM me if you want as well. I'll send you like a little checklist. And I also do consulting. And if you're in Southern California, I do it for you service, where people come in, get you disaster prepped, very little time on your part, and just get that situation handled. So
you kind of talked about that a little bit last night as well. I know we're probably getting towards the end of this interview where we can bring in some actionables, and some men asked you, again, with the upcoming election and just where we are in time in this country. And someone said, is shit going to hit the fan? And your immediate response was, well, it's probably a good idea to always be ready. And it's like, yep. So if you could maybe speak to that and actually give some practical, you gave some great, just straight up, here's basics at your core minimum. This is what you need to do. I think would also be helpful for men out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we take for granted how easy it is to have our needs met around us. Like it's crazy. We can just go to a tap water, like a sink anywhere, and just go like this, and you get fresh, potable water coming out. It's unheard of in most places of the world. And what's also pretty wild is while you're so accustomed to that, you forget that actually requires electricity to pump the water to your home. And also, the Biden administration, World Economic Forum, multiple high level agencies have said multiple times they think cyber attacks could be happening soon to affect critical infrastructure to include our electrical grid. So take that and to think, oh, wait, what if I don't have water? And we're just so used to, as humans, being living near water sources that we forget that that's like an essential survival thing. And most of us have never really been that thirsty. But now imagine a situation where your tap water is not coming out, the electricity is down, shit is starting to get real, and now you don't have any water stored up in your home. Like, how scary that would be. So I'd say at a minimum, like, hey, be able to defend your home, because if you can't defend it, it's not yours. And also have some water stored. Like, if you just have a minimum of 2 weeks, like that psychological sense of peace that you can get from that is powerful. And if you don't have that, what that would be like if you're in a situation where you're relying on the government to get your water needs met. And I will say this: a lot of people will be like, "Oh no, I'm fine. I have a pool." You're like, okay, well, do you even know how to drink out of a pool? Like, it's not easy. Most pools, and I do this because I go to homes and I actually test their water. Especially if they're a wealthier person, their pools are not potable. Like, the potable levels that is safe, it has to be 500 parts per million and below. If you're 500 parts to 1,000 parts per million, that's only safe for a short term, and you have to be able to filter it.
Tyler, just for the layman, what does potable mean?
Being able to drink water. Yep, your body can process it and utilize it as water without it causing any damage to you.
And you say 500 parts per million, 500 parts of what?
So it'd be dissolved solids, so TDS. But salt is like so saltwater pools would cause that issue. But yeah, what I'm basically saying is, like, don't let your mind trick you to making you feel like you're ready, because that's an easy path to be like, oh yeah, no, I've got a pool, I'm ready. It's like, no, you're not. Like, come to terms with it. You don't understand this. Like, just learn, accept that you are not ready and you don't know. If you can accept that, then you can take a responsibility. That goes back to what we were saying earlier about the ego. Then you can take a responsibility, like, hey, that humility, I don't know, and it's okay. Like, I'm going to take the steps, though, to get myself ready. And the most basic step you can take is being able to defend your home and just have the basics of water. Because if you don't have water, you're going to die within 2 to 3 days if you don't have water. So it's important. So that's some basic steps you can do. Yeah, get a firearm, and then I'd recommend getting a med kit and just get some basic medical skills.
Yeah, we talk about nutrients. We can go 2 to 3 minutes without air, so that's kind of important. 2 to 3 days without water. 2 to 3 weeks without food. All right, so I think people prioritize food over water, and that's a big mistake. And again, like you said, if you can't defend it, it's not yours.
Yeah, that was powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's society breaks down, no 911. Like, you got to be 911 yourself.
Wow, man, you dropped so many truths on this episode, and I know it got me thinking about a lot of things. Even after last night's call, I was thinking about a lot of things, and now it's definitely driving it in home even more. And I just have a real respect for your level of discipline and focus in your life, and getting the reps in, and just taking your ego out of it. So thank you for that, and I learned a lot. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I get to call you bro, and I'm grateful for that, man. And not only thank you for your service to our country, but also thank you for your service to humanity and trying to teach civilians these things so that they can be the protector, and helping to reestablish these basic tenets of manhood. so we can all step up and be better versions of ourselves. So appreciate you, bro.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know that's what you guys are all about. I listened to a couple of your podcasts already. So, that's a service to humanity, and love what you guys are doing. And, I'd love to stay in touch and keep part of what you're doing, like add in any way I can. So I think it's awesome.
Count on it.
Yeah, you're doing that. Thank you.
We'll definitely continue. Thank you, brother. Thank you, Michael. Excellent episode. I hope you guys out there listening enjoy this, take some value out of it. Check out Tyler's website. Obviously, like, share, subscribe. Help us get the word out to as many men as possible. And Michael, say something profound. Wrap us up.
SNAFUready.com. Get your med kits before Tyler's on his next mission. All right. Thank you, man. Have a beautiful day.